New photo ID requirements in Wisconsin will be in effect for the next election.
With 1 week left before the spring primary, the Government Accountability Board is trying to inform people about the new photo ID requirements. And Kevin Kennedy of the GAB is here with more on this.
Welcome to see you,
welcome
Kevin.
to Live at 4. Everyone needs an ID, a photo ID to vote.
Pretty much everybody. Our military and permanently overseas do not need that for their absentee ballots. People who are indefinitely confined, can't get out of their house, they're in a nursing home, they don't need it either.
When you say a photo ID, what do you mean specifically? What do you need to bring?
Most of us have what we need: a Wisconsin driver's license, a Wisconsin issued ID card, a passport, military ID. Students, two-step process with students though. They need not only a current student ID that they've signed, but they need a proof of current enrollment. They can usually print that out from their college portal.
So if someone needs an ID, can they get one by next week, and what should they do?
Well, we want them to be prepared, so we want them to be thinking about this last week, if possible. If they don't have the ID that they need, they can go down to the Department of Transportation. They'll help them. Particularly, you need certain records to prove, that you're a U.S. citizen, that you're current residents. If you don't have your birth certificate, they can probably help you locate it. That's part of the requirement that the Supreme Court put in back in 2014 when they upheld our law. And it's one of these things, if you start planning for it, fine, but if you wake up on election day and you haven't thought about it, that's when we get...
Well, I was just going to ask you that. If you go to the polls and you haven't done anything to prepare for that, is there anything on election day that you can take care of to get an ID?
You can vote on election day, but that ballot's not going to count. We call it a provisional ballot. You get to mark the ballot. You can come back to the polls on election day. This is people who forget their IDs usually, who have it. Or you've got 3 days, up to 4 o'clock on the Friday after the election, to get in there with the proper ID. Not a lot of time, but it does make up for the fact that sometimes we take off and we leave the wallet on the dresser.
So this law has been in effect now for a while, and you've had some elections, some local elections. How are things worked with the ID?
They've worked really well. We had very few people using provisional ballots. People seem to be very comfortable with it. We had 29 special elections from the time it went back into place in early April through the end of 2015. So we got some good practice runs and got some good feedback from local election officials. It seems people are prepared, but things ramp up in a presidential year.
You brought a little pamphlet along. Why don't you hold that up for folks can get more information? Sometimes it's easier to actually read something than it is to just remember it.
We have a number of resources, primarily on the web. If you go to our wisconsin.gov.
Let's hold it up here. There we go.
We have a campaign called Bring It to the Ballot. Bring your ID. And so bringit.wi.gov will get you all the information you need to know about that. We also have My Vote Wisconsin, which tells you what's your status. Am I currently registered? Where do I vote? Who are my choices on the ballot? We just drew the names for the order for the presidential ballot today, so we know who's number 1, who's number 2 on the Republican and on the Democratic, and that's going to go off to the printer for April. But you can look and see how they line up.
All right, number of big elections coming up, so you'll want to make sure you're all set to vote. Kevin, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Kevin.
Great
Good to
information.
see you.
Good to see you.